Thank you. We have a little bit of everything in the service today. We're honoring Yom Kippur and Irish and all of it. So this month our theme is called Live Long and Prosper. But in unity, before we can step into and affirm the good, we need to engage in a process that's called denial. And denial is basically releasing, letting go, and making room. One of the standard definitions of a denial in unity is that no outward situation has ultimate power over me. Because we are divine beings in human bodies, that is actually the truth of us. And so anything that is in the outer doesn't have the ultimate power over us. So in keeping with Yom Kippur, which was yesterday, we're going to practice later a forgiveness ritual. And forgiveness is a form of denial. So the word Yom Kippur means Day of Atonement or Day of Awe. It is when the book of life is sealed, and the big question is your name written in the book of life? Are you going to be here for another year? It's the big question that we always ask, isn't it? Is how much time do we have left? And whether I have another 20, 30, 40 years or whether I have a few days, making amends and having clarity of spirit, clarity of soul is ultimately what's important. It seems that collectively for the last couple of years, many of us are facing the lesson of death and regeneration and letting go. It seems to be a time of karmic endings. And when I look back over this year, it seems like it is filled with long goodbyes and looking death square in the face in whatever form it comes, whether it be leaving the body behind or endings of things. You know, my own little dog had her second cancer surgery this year, and she's 12, and I know that that's coming to an end. Johnny, I know you lost 2 beloved kitty cats this year. How many of you have lost a pet this year? Yeah, quite a few. And then, of course, there's our loved ones who are making their transitions. Our own Diane Robertson's mom died unexpectedly a couple of weeks ago. Our beloved Gail, who's still with us, but she was diagnosed with cancer, our finance manager, in January. And she has been working through her healing process this whole year, and she'll be back in November and is healing. But whenever we are faced with the diagnosis or those situations, we have no choice but to really look at death in the face. So how many of you have had endings this year in a way that perhaps you've never had before? Anybody? And how many of you are engaged in the long goodbye with someone in your life? I mean, the truth is that all of us are engaged in the long goodbye, right? I mean, truth is we're going to have to say goodbye to everybody that we love someday. Either I'm going to leave, or you're going to leave, or she's going to leave, or he's going to leave, whether it be through circumstances or whether it be through that ultimate transition that we make in life. And it's the truth of life, that life is impermanent, but it's also what makes life worth living, isn't it? And there should be no hesitation for living the life of your choosing, because we don't know how much time we have. We don't know if our name is written in the book of life. So again, on Yom Kippur, the book of life is sealed, and it's an opportunity to make amends. Jesus said it this way when he said, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." And the parable that I love about forgiveness is found in the book of Matthew. And it's the story where Peter walks up to Jesus and he says, "So how many times should I forgive? 7 times?" And Jesus says, "No, you need to forgive like 7 times 70. In other words, as long as it takes and as often as it takes. That's how long you need to forgive." So he tells a story about a king And the king was going through his accounts, and he realized, that some people owed him a lot of money. So he called up one of his servants, and he said, you owe me like millions of dollars, and I got to settle these debts. And in those days, when you had to settle your debts, you didn't file for bankruptcy. Instead, you got sold into the slavery, and not only did you, but so did your kids and your wife and your whole family. And he said, so I need to settle up this debt, so I'm going to have to, sell you and your wife and your kids. And he said, and he got down on his hands and knees, and he goes, oh, please, have mercy on me. I'm going to make good. I just need a little more time. And the king took pity on him, and he says, you know what? I forgive your debts. You're free. Just go. So the servant, you think, he's really happy because he's been cleared of this debt, and he runs into another guy who owes him money, who owes him thousands of dollars, and he says, hey, you owe me thousands of dollars. And the guy says, oh, I don't have it, but I'm good for it, so just give me a little more time and I'll pay you. And he says, no, and he has him thrown into debtor's prison, and he says, you're going to stay there till you pay me back. I don't know how you pay somebody back when you're in debtor's prison, but that's how the story goes. Well, the king finds out about it, and the king says, wait a minute. I forgave you a debt of like millions of dollars, and you're not going to forgive your friend? What is with you? And so the story goes that he then throws this guy into prison and tortures him. It is the Bible, there are those. And the scripture ends with, and that's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart. Okay, so when we look at this, it's like, wow, that's a bit harsh, don't you think? But the truth is, do we not put ourselves in prison when we don't forgive? Isn't it the truth that we torture ourselves when we're not forgiving? Right? I mean, it's like, the person that we need to forgive is probably out having a good time, going to the movies, just enjoying themselves, and we're meanwhile like, we're in our own self-inflicted prison, and we are in our own self-inflicted torture. So forgiveness is a way to clear the way. It's a spiritual law, and it's an active denial. Now, I recognize that forgiveness can happen all at once. But the truth is, that's never happened for me. Has that ever? I don't know. For me, it's a process. And I know that I've done my forgiveness work when the charge is taken out of it for me. When I see the person or whatever the situation is and there's no charge there. But sometimes for me, that takes a while. And it's like an onion, I think. I think there's like layers to it. And so if you feel like, hey, I've got all this forgiveness work to do, but I'm a little behind, be gentle with yourself. And it's one of the reasons that I love the story of Joseph, because Joseph, in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, he's sold into slavery by his brothers because he's like this, he's very arrogant, and he's, hey, I'm my father's favorite. And so the brothers get rid of him, and they sell him into slavery. They take his coat, and they cover it with animal blood. They take it home to their dad, and they go, oh, he got eaten by a wild animal. Don't know what happened. And through years and a series of events, Joseph ends up as the right-hand man of the Pharaoh, right? And he has these prophetic dreams, so he knows a famine is coming, and he has set aside food for the whole country. Well, guess what? Everybody in the neighboring towns comes by because they need the food, and who should show up but his brothers? And his brothers show up, and they're wanting food, and he's like, they don't recognize him, but he recognizes them. Do you think he just forgives them? Says, brothers, I forgive you. No, he kind of has to jerk their chain a little bit first. Yeah. So what he does is he says, I need you to go back and bring back your brother. I know you have a brother. And when they leave, he sends one of his servants to put a silver cup in their saddle. And then he sends the guards after them, and they're accused of stealing. And that's a pretty serious serious offense. So they come back, and they're terrified. They're just terrified. And you can just see Joseph, he's just kind of like, he's enjoying it, he's enjoying it a little bit. And finally, he says to his brothers, he tells them who he is. He says, I am your brother. And of course, they're saying, oh, forgive us, forgive us. And he says, you know what? You meant it for harm, but God meant it for good. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. How many times in your life has something happened to you, whether it be the diagnosis of an illness or a betrayal or whatever it may be, there's something happened to you and it wasn't good, but in the long run, it turned out to be good. It turned out to be a blessing. I think that's what the workshop is about this afternoon, the gift of cancer. Could we start passing out the croutons, please? So, now the truth is that in order for us to look at situations and to see the good in them, it may mean that we have to let go of being a victim, right? We may have to let go of our stories. We may have to let go of seeing things like, this is why I am the way I am because of my childhood. So we are going to participate in a ritual, and the Jewish word is, and I may not be pronouncing it right, is tashlich. Tashlich. And it is casting the bread upon the water. So if you just would let the thing go, it'll go a lot quicker than that. So, what? Do not eat them, sorry. Do not eat this. This is not communion. This is tashlich. This is tashlich. So this ceremony is in the Jewish tradition, and tashlich literally means casting off, and it involves symbolically casting off the mistakes of the previous year by tossing pieces of bread or other food into a body of flowing water. All right, we did this last year for those of you who were here, and last year we used tortillas, remember? Because I've been trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we do this, you know? And as you know, when we're done with this, I'll take it to the waters and cast it off. And usually the ducks then come and eat it, but they don't like tortillas, so. So we're not having tortillas this year. Annie suggested croutons. I thought, well, that's perfect. And I know some of you have an allergy to gluten, and if so, then just do it with your mind. So the idea behind this ritual is that we take all the regrets, the unforgiveness, the resentments, and we put it in the bread. We put it in the bread, and then we're going to collect them in a bowl, and if you want to take it yourself and cast it, you certainly can, but I guarantee you that I will cast it, if not today, then tomorrow for sure. And this is an active denial. This is the process of forgiveness. So I would invite you, I know you already have, to take the bread in your hands, and as it's coming around, I'm sure that you will have it. And whether the bread is still coming around, I would like you to think about this question: who haven't you forgiven in your life yet? Who haven't you forgiven? Just let that person come forward in your consciousness, recognizing that this person did not mean you any harm, but God meant it for good. So whatever negative feelings you have, let your resentment, let your unforgiveness, let it flow through your body and out of your hands and into the bread. Just let it go. Now here's the other side of this question is, who have you harmed? Rather intentionally or unintentionally, who have you harmed? And even if you don't know the details, I put whoever I have harmed or hurt, intentionally or unintentionally, into this bread. I put whoever I have harmed intentionally or unintentionally into this bread. How have you failed yourself this year? How have you forgotten your divinity and played small? And let it flow out of you and into the bread. And then just take a deep cleansing breath, and the bowls will come around as I continue to talk, and I invite you just to throw that in there. So this is an ancient practice. It is the practice of an active denial, of releasing and of letting go, and of making amends. So if there's someone that you feel that you need to make amends to, then I invite you to consider taking action, because life is short. Bing, 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 the croutons. As you hear it go bing, bing, bing. And life is one long goodbye. So let's just let it just go on its own. And if you would kind of put it in quietly and consciously. Life is short, and life is one long goodbye. I know that many of you, through Facebook and through other things, know that Richard Levy, our former minister here, for those of you who don't know, is about to make his transition. It could be today. It could be, for sure, probably this week, it looks like. And I've been in communication with them, and Carl Anthony is with them and their daughters as he prepares to make their transition. And I wanted to include you in this process and to include you in the prayers. Carl wrote on September 30th that he was with them in Kona, and he said, Maureen is holding up and taking care of things as she always does, and she will soon need our love and friendship more than ever. On the 2nd of October, Carl writes that Richard is sleeping most of the time, and he says that he's never felt so tired. Keeping his eyes open is a challenge, and he lets us know that he is ready for his life to be over. Richard mentioned this morning that all hesitation of dying is released. He wants to be let go of his body, and every time he looks at me, he says, I'm done. As you think of Richard, or say a prayer for our brother, include that his wish come true very soon. And on the 3rd, last night was a beautiful sunset, and Richard and Maureen were able to be together outside to take it in. In the morning, Maureen was able to place a call to Richard's mom, and Richard was able to speak with her and to say goodbye to his mother. This, as you could imagine, is not an easy call, but it was beautiful that they were able to have that moment. I am amazed how even in his weakened state, as I sing a song, he sings along or drums with his fingers. Our brother has always loved music, and hopefully every song he has sung will be moving through his mind and heart in these last few days. So I was thinking that in my own prayers, I have lit a candle for Richard, and I have been sending my prayers and singing to him, and I thought that collectively it would be nice if we could send him a song and a prayer as he is ready to cross over to the other side. And the song that comes up for me is the song Return Again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again, return to the land of your soul. So I would like for you to just sort of, and if you don't know Richard, then I invite you to hold somebody that you know that's about to make their transition, or maybe you just want to sing this song to yourself. So we hold Richard, we hold Maureen, Alethea, Maura, Xander, Carl. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who, what, where? Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. One more time. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. Who, what, where? Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. And we just see this transition happening with grace and ease. We hold his family in love and light, and we are so grateful for all that you have been to us, all the light and laughter that you have brought to us. Amen. So life is a long goodbye. It's impermanent, and that's what makes it so amazing. So in honor of Yom Kippur, we have forgiven and we have asked for forgiveness. But like Joseph, recognize that people and situations may have meant harm, but God meant it for good. Recognize, too, that forgiveness is a process, and we have entered into that process today. So situations can bring us good. And I want to share with you in closing a poem by Eve Ensler, and it is about cancer and about living and about the long goodbye. It happens like this. The doctor walks toward me, his face is ashen, and he says, "We found something, and it doesn't look good." And there's a trapdoor in the seat of the waiting room, and I'm falling. And as I fall, I hear the echo of him saying, "CAT scan, a big as a mango, can't be sure." And the falling goes on for days. Even though I appear to be walking and giving speeches and riding on airplanes, I'm falling. As the new doctor at the new hospital says, it's cancer. And I wait to hear where it's coming from and where it's gone. And I get pricked and probed and punctured. I am falling. As they first say, it is not in my liver, and then later they can't be sure, falling. Until they drug me and wheel me off for 9 hours, and when I wake up, I'm in a new country. Nothing is familiar. Because of the possibility of not dying is gone. Because I am now living in the land of the sick. Turns out my being a vegetarian, sober, non-smoker activist has not protected me after all. There is space, there is a hunger to just be still. Cancer stopped me from running, striving, trying to prove my worth. It stopped me from apologizing for the truth. It made me stay in one place for 6 months. It brought me back my sister. It allowed me to commune with my friends. It forced me to take in love and be cared for, which made me human. And I now live with death as my companion, and sometimes she scares me, and sometimes she comforts me. But mainly, she inspires me to be braver, and I no longer have any desire to be invincible, because it isn't possible. Cancer made it clear that time is short, and there must be time to linger, and time to enjoy, and time to remember, and time for nothing. And everything is precious. The Indian sari curtains glittering in late summer sun, the man petting his ugly dog in the park, the morning fog. Dying is the only way of being born. So none of us knows if our name is written in the book of life. Life is impermanent, and we are all engaged in the long goodbye. Again, it's what makes life precious. In the parable of the debtor, the man was thrown into prison and tortured for not being forgiving. And we too are tortured and in a self-inflicted prison when we hold on to resentment. So we have cleared and cast off through the tashlich. So when you get hit with things that you may not have chosen, like the diagnosis, the job layoff, the betrayal, the death, recognize that it may have been meant for harm, but God meant it for good. Through letting go, we make room and live. If not a long life, at least a deep and meaningful life. And we prosper in ways that go beyond the material. Live long and prosper.
Thank you, Karen.